Hello once again, everybody, and thank you for joining me in the Bettor's Box. This is ATS.io's MLB betting podcast for Monday, July 19th. I'm your host, Adam Burke. Make sure you check out the daily article over at ATS.io, that new format that we started about a month or so ago. Everybody seems to like that, taking a look at some bullet point thoughts on the games throughout the day, but then writing some individual previews for the games that are official picks in the ATS app. So check out the daily article and those accompanying previews every day over at the website, and download that ATS app from the Google Play Store or from the Apple Store. It's a bet tracker, an odds screen, a stats database, full article integration from the website. You buy a premium model subscription in there as well. Lots of great things at your fingertips there. Very helpful resources to make you a better in that ATS app. Speaking of resources, I've been working on some college football stuff for you over at ATS.io to check out. Posted my college football power ratings last week. Posted some of my season win total best bets, including my spreadsheet of all of my projected win totals and all of my projected lines for the upcoming college football season over there at the website. To go along with, over the weekend here, I'll look at some new offensive and defensive coordinators that I think should have an impact for this upcoming college football season. So you can check that stuff out over at ATS.io. And real quickly, I want to mention that we will not be doing shows with Brian Blessing the next couple of weeks here. We'll have an announcement to make next week on the shows, but won't be doing anything with Brian Blessing here over the next 2 weeks on ATS Radio. But we'll have the Bettor's Box coming up here on Mondays, obviously, and then also another edition here coming up on Thursday. So with that, we get into today's edition of the Bettor's Box. We'll go beyond the box score, then take a look down the lines. I'll give you a pick for tonight's action, and then preview 4 series for the week ahead. Still a lot of blanks in terms of the probable pitchers. Teams still setting up their rotations for the second half and all of that. So not a full list of starters for those previews, but still some thoughts coming up for me here at the tail end of today's show. And we start with a look beyond the box score, and a very big weekend for offense coming out of the All-Star break. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, collectively across the board, 252 batting average, 324 on base, 422 slugging percentage. Saw 116 home runs hit over the weekend. Strikeout percentage down at 22.5%. And this is an extension, but to a higher degree, of what we've seen since the foreign substance crackdown with that first memo on June 3rd, then of course June 21st, actually checking the pitchers, and they've continued to do that here after the All-Star break. Yeah, the Padres and the Blue Jays did kind of skew the metrics a little bit. Padres with a monster offensive weekend at Nationals Park. The Blue Jays hanging 25 runs in 20 innings, I think, against the Texas Rangers here over the weekend. So those two teams did skew the numbers a little bit here, but the primary takeaway is that, look, we're still sitting 247 with a 321 on base and a 416 slugging since that June 3rd substance crackdown. It has had the impact that Major League Baseball was looking for. And again, the biggest thing here is the lower strikeout percentage. You've got more chances at high velocity contact. And what we're seeing here is that the teams that hit for power are the teams that have really benefited the most. The teams that, when they don't strike out, are going to have those extra base hit types of outcomes on those batted balls. So that's what we've definitely seen here so far, is that the offenses that have been really good since the crackdown have been teams that are always really good, but teams like the Blue Jays, teams like the Astros, teams like the Giants and the Angels, teams that take their batted balls and generate a lot of power with them. The low slugging percentage offenses, the Royals and the Cardinals and the Cubs and teams like that, they're continuing to struggle. Even though this is a much higher offensive environment across the board, the teams that don't hit for power are struggling. And even my Cleveland Indians, who are not a good offense by a lot of the metrics out there, they're not a good offense at all. They're still in the bottom 10 in the league. They're still, they were a bottom 5 offense up until the substance crackdown. But they do hit home runs, and they do make a good amount of hard contact. So they've been able to have a little bit more success here in this lower strikeout environment. So as we move forward, I don't think that changes at all. You think about some of the hitters that are going to be available here at the trade deadline, guys like a Joey Gallo, guys like a Chris Bryant, guys that can hit for power, guys that make really quality contact, they should thrive with their new teams, because a lot of these teams that do have bats with power are the ones that are having the good offensive numbers. So that's something for you to keep in mind here as we go forward, as we kind of put together a profile of some of the play-on teams that are out there. Look for teams that hit for power, and furthermore, look to fade pitchers that are giving up a lot of home runs, pitchers that don't have a great command profile, because it's still challenging to score in the traditional way, manufacturing innings and all of that kind of thing. But we are seeing an uptick in home runs, and a big one at that. And with additional balls in play, we're seeing more batted balls go for hits. So look for those pitchers that don't have great command profiles. Look to bet overs in their games, or look to fade them, because power is back to really ruling the day here in Major League Baseball. And to that end, the batting average on batted balls of 95 plus miles per hour up to 496 now, with a 621 weighted on base average. That's been steadily rising as we've gone forward here throughout the season. It was something that was down in the 480s, throughout April and May. Now it's up approaching 500, could very well get there by the end of the season. So the success rate of high velocity contact has gone up, but we haven't really seen an increase in contact quality, something I'll talk about here in a couple of minutes. But something I did want to take a look at here, team records and rankings by FIP, fielding independent pitching, since June 3rd. And I thought this was really interesting, because as I started going through, I sort of found some correlations here with some of these teams. So the Brewers are 27-13, and these are ranked by number of wins, by the way. Brewers are 27-13. They also have the best FIP of any team since June 3rd. They are first in that department. Dodgers are 25-13. They are third in FIP. Astros 25-14, eighth in FIP. Reds 24-16. They rank ninth in fielding independent pitching. The Giants at 23-13 are second in FIP. The Red Sox 24-15, but they are 20th in FIP. White Sox 23-14, they're sixth in FIP. And the Mariners 22-15, they are 10th in FIP. So you've got some good offenses there, a lot of good offenses there. You have the Mariners, who are winning a lot of one-run games, being, pretty big overachiever, all of that. But I think the Red Sox are a really interesting one to point out here at 24-15 since June 3rd, but 20th in FIP. And there's still a borderline top 10 offense, but they really haven't had the uptick that a lot of other teams have had. They don't hit for a lot of home run power. So they haven't had the same kind of offensive uptick that other teams have had. And when you look at the Red Sox here, when you look at their alternate standings metrics, they are +4 in Pythagorean win-loss, and they are +8 in base runs. Now, we saw them lose that series over the weekend to the shorthanded Yankees, but there are a lot of discouraging signs in the profile for the Boston Red Sox here. They're winning games in spite of their pitching. They're winning games in spite of not having a whole lot of power, in spite of not really having the uptick in offensive production that we've seen from other teams around the league. So there are some people out there that are very pessimistic about Boston, and it's probably deserved at this point in time. I mean, you probably look at a team like the Rays to win that division. There's not a whole lot of value on the price, but I do think that there are enough, negative signs here for the Red Sox to believe that they are going to fall off the pace a little bit. Now, they are going to get Chris Sale back here probably in 3 weeks to a month, something like that. So he kind of serves as a de facto trade deadline acquisition. And maybe that's something that does kind of help Boston stabilize a little bit. But that patchwork rotation of guys like Nick Pivetta and Martin Perez and Garrett Richards and some of these guys, those guys have really fallen off here of late. Eduardo Rodriguez has gotten better, and Nate Eovaldi is having a Cy Young caliber kind of season. But the other guys, the depth guys, are kind of falling off a little bit. So Boston is a team that, first of all, I think they need to be in the market for some starting pitching at the trade deadline. But second, I think there are questions about their sustainability, about their ability to continue playing to this degree. And again, of the teams with the most wins since June 3rd, they are the only one outside the top 10 in FIP, and they are 20th in that department. So Boston may be living on some smoke and mirrors right now And I think that as we kind of put together a profile of them as a team here going forward, I do think that we will find quite a few negative regression signs in that profile. Now, as far as the worst teams since June 3rd, the Diamondbacks are 7-31. They are 30th in FIP. Royals 10-29, 29th in FIP. Orioles 11-25, 27th in FIP. Rangers 13-23, 28th in FIP. The Cubs 14-24, 26th in FIP. Cardinals 15-22, 24th. And then the Marlins and the Pirates are both 16-23. But the Marlins are 4th in FIP and the Pirates are 23rd. So again, a very high correlation here between FIP and records since June 3rd. Offense has gone up around the league. We do think about, things in the context of offense driving the bus. But really what it is that the teams that have been able to survive this spin rate crackdown from a pitching standpoint have done very, very well. The teams that don't have good pitching staffs, and these teams have not had good pitching staffs all year long, with the exception of the Marlins, of course, they've really fallen off the pace. They've really faltered quite a bit. Again, I don't think this changes as we go forward here. And when you talk about these teams that are really bad, Arizona and Kansas City and Baltimore and Texas and all of that, it creates a very chalky environment as we go forward here, where I think big favorites will continue to do very well, especially the big favorites that are the really good offensive teams. So as we go throughout the rest of the regular season here, you cannot be allergic to chalk. You're going to have to look to play on some of these big favorites. Try to get out in front of some of these numbers before the lines move. Don't lay, minus 250 when you could have had minus 210, something like that, because in the event that that team loses, every little bit that you can recoup or at least avoid losing is going to help your bottom line. But the thing about it is here, I think we have a very top-heavy rest of the baseball season because you've got a lot of haves and a lot of have-nots. And you've got teams that are hitting very well in this new environment, and you've got teams that can do a good job on the pitching side. And look, it's probably not earth-shattering analysis or anything like that to say, well, the teams that have pitched the best have the best records. But it's simply to say that in this environment here, where we see this increase in power, where we see this decrease in strikeout rate, and keep in mind, too, these teams that are really bad in FIP, they're bad because they don't strike anybody out. The Diamondbacks don't strike anybody out. The Royals, a lot of pitch-to-contact guys. Same thing with the Orioles. Same thing with the Rangers. Same thing with the Cubs and the Cardinals. Pirates as well. These are all pitch-to-contact pitching staffs. So maybe more than ever, it's important to have that increased margin for error like pitching staffs like the Brewers and the Dodgers have, like the Giants have, stuff like that. So like the White Sox have for sure. So this is very important, I think. And I think that, again, you don't want to be allergic to chalk the rest of the way because I don't see a lot of this changing. I mean, yeah, the Marlins have a great pitching staff and we'll keep our fingers crossed that Pablo Lopez is okay, but they don't hit, so you at least have to be able to hit at some kind of level while also being able to pitch. And a lot of these really bad teams can't really do either one of those things. So it will be a top-heavy rest of the regular season, I think, as we go forward here. And look, we had 5 teams with a strikeout per 9 inning rate over 10 from April 1st to June 2nd. We have 3 teams now, the White Sox, the Dodgers, and the Brewers. Brewers' best record in baseball since June 3rd. Dodgers' second best record in baseball since June 3rd. And the White Sox at 23-14 doing well. They've have missed out on a few games because of postponements and whatnot, but the White Sox are playing very well also. The 2 teams that fell out, the Padres and the Angels, the Padres have gotten the offense going. The Angels have the offense going as well. But, this lower strikeout environment is something that we need to pay close attention to. And as I talked about probably about a month and a half or so ago, then it also brings defense into the equation a lot more. A lot of those teams that are playing well are pretty good defensive teams. A lot of the teams that aren't playing well aren't very good defensive teams. So all of this kind of works hand in hand here. If we look at some of the macro trends across Major League Baseball since that foreign substance crackdown, look, you've got to have some margin for error to miss bats. You've got to have an offense that likes to hit for power. Even the Brewers' offense has gotten going here in this span. The pitching staff has obviously been great, but even the Brewers' offense has gotten going. They've hit for a little bit more power here of late. Maybe they made some adjustments, something like that. Maybe, the smart organizations will kind of pick up on these things. We'll pick up on some of these smaller sample size trends, kind of figure out if there are adjustments that they can make with their hitters. Just the same thing that we're doing, trying to make adjustments here in the betting markets. But as I said, I think you've got to really look at teams that hit for power and can prevent power, and that means getting a lot of strikeouts. So I think it makes sense that a lot of these teams that are up here do have high strikeout rates from their pitching staffs. You can email me skatingtripods@gmail.com to get on the list for the Bettor's Box show notes. And I always talk about a lot of numbers, a lot of metrics, and all of that. So I think it's very important to get on that list for the show notes. I realize I didn't send any out during the All-Star break last week, so I apologize for that. But I will return to doing that here with this Monday's show. So as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we're seeing more success for offenses, but we're not necessarily seeing any harder contact. When we look at the hard hit percentage from April 1st to June 2nd, there were 12 teams over 40%. And in order, they were the Twins at 42.8, Yankees and Braves 42.7, Nationals 42.4, Giants 41.7, Red Sox 41.4, Blue Jays just over 41%, the A's just under 41%, then the Indians, Dodgers, Padres, and Cubs. So we had 12 teams from April 1st to June 2nd with a hard hit percentage over 40%. Since June 3rd, through yesterday's games, we only have 10 teams with a hard hit percentage over 40%. They are the Padres at 43.1, Blue Jays 42.7, Astros 42.2, Yankees and Red Sox both 42.1, White Sox 41.2, Royals 40.7, Twins 40.6, Nationals 40.5, and the Indians at 40.1. So we went from 12 teams from April 1st to June 2nd at 40% of a hard hit percentage. Now we're down to 10. So even though we've got this substance crackdown that has decreased spin rates, kind of created a little bit less movement, has allowed more players to put more balls in play, they're not putting balls in play at a super hard hit rate or anything like that. Now, part of this, of course, is because as you increase the sample size, you kind of get a lot more outcomes and all of that. So that's probably the reason why this list has gone down a little bit. But it's simply to say that we're not exactly seeing an uptick in hard hit contact or anything like that. We're just seeing more balls in play, more opportunities to create hits. So, I think it's very interesting to look at the tale of two seasons here. I mean, you think about the first half and the second half with regards to the All-Star break. But to me, I look at this baseball season, and it's April 1st to June 2nd was the first half, and June 3rd through the end of the season is the second half. That was such a fundamental change to Major League Baseball, and we've seen such a different environment here as we've gone forward. But I think one thing it is interesting to point out here is, of the teams on those two lists, the Twins, Yankees, Nationals, Red Sox, Blue Jays, Indians, and Padres show up in both columns in my notes here for today's show. So the teams that were making a lot of hard contact early on are still doing so. That hasn't changed. There are some newcomers, the Astros, White Sox, and Royals, all teams up there in the top 10 now. But again, the offensive profiles for these teams with this new format, they've still done well. So I think it's really important to kind of take a look at those things here. One thing I will mention, the Royals, who are 7th in hard hit percentage at 40.7%. So at least 40.7% of their batted balls have been hit 95 plus miles per hour. They are dead last in batting average on those batted balls and dead last by a large margin in weighted on base average. So they've made hard contact and they've had absolutely no success on it. A couple of other teams on this list, the Indians and the Padres. Padres with a massive uptick in hard contact, by the way, up 2.8% since June 3rd. They're starting to move up the list a little bit. Same thing with the Indians in terms of batting average and weighted on base average on hard hit contact. So like I talked about before, the extreme outliers will regress to the mean. Those two teams are moving up the charts a little bit. The Padres are still 26th in weighted on base average, but they have the second highest raw number of batted balls hit at least 95 miles per hour. So that should continue to help them as we go forward. Once again, skatingtripods@gmail.com to get on the list for the Bettor's Box show notes. Let's go ahead and take a look down the lines here. And this weekend was kind of a mess. We had unknown starters. We had starters swapping in and out. We had some double headers. We had all kinds of different things going on here this weekend. In Major League Baseball, we had suspended games that had to be completed on Sunday before the Sunday game could start. All kinds of stuff going on. But there were a few things with the betting markets I want to take a look at here. And one of them being on Friday, Matt Moore got faded again and burned bettors again. I'm not sure if it's the third or the fourth time that that's happened, but we've seen 25, 30-cent moves against Matt Moore in his last several starts, and he's won every one of them, I think. So that was an interesting one there on Friday. That was a game of a doubleheader between the Marlins and the Phillies. We saw Kyle Hendricks take some money against Madison Bumgarner and the Diamondbacks. Not really a big surprise on Friday. I was on the Cubs in that one. Kind of talked about that game in terms of, is Arizona going to be excited to get back to the ballpark? Turns out that they really weren't. But Kyle Hendricks has been outstanding over his last 12 starts. And that's something I think is really interesting to keep in mind, is that you have some pitchers here where, their full season numbers maybe don't look that great, but maybe they got off to really bad starts in April. I think about Shohei Ohtani and how the market is they're not real high on him in his starts as a pitcher, but his walk rate is so much lower over his last 8 starts than it was in his first 4 starts that he still gets punished for his high walk rate, even though it hasn't really been a factor except for that one start against the Yankees since the month of April. So those things are important to kind of keep in mind here. And I think it's important to keep in mind with a guy like Hendricks, who got off to such a horrific start, but he's pitched so well here of late. On Friday, a line move that I expected to see, but we didn't see, a game that I was on actually on Friday, was Houston and Chicago with Lance McCullers against Dylan Cease. Now, I don't think that the betting markets have fully realized this, and I'm not entirely sure why, but Dylan Cease's spin rates are down significantly since that memo on June 3rd, and his performance, specifically his command, down significantly as well. So that's a guy I'm actively looking to fade here. And the White Sox are a very good team, a team that I do believe in to a degree offensively. But Cease is not a guy that I want to back. So that was one where I was kind of surprised that we didn't see more of a line move in that game. We'll see if the market kind of corrects itself in Cease's next start, depending, of course, on who he's matched up with and who that start comes against. On Saturday, we saw a very big Brewers move, about a 25, 30-cent move on Brandon Woodruff for his start against Luis Castillo. And I thought this one was pretty interesting. And both guys pitched really well. Castillo especially pitched great. That was an ugly one for both of those bullpens. Castillo threw 6 excellent innings in that game. And in fact, he's pitched outstandingly well since the start of June. He's been terrific for Cincinnati. And that's another one of those guys where his full season numbers are not nearly indicative of where he's at right now. But even with that, the market did bet against the Reds in that game. There had been a lot of Reds steam at home throughout the course of the season, but not in that one. And the market was right, at least in terms of the final. But Castillo did outperform Woodruff in that start. So look for Castillo to probably take some steam, once again here in his next outing. We're not seeing as many totals moves right now. Maybe we're seeing a half run up or a half run down, but we were seeing moves of a full run, in the month of June. The new normal has pretty much stabilized. The odds makers have done a really good job. I think overs and unders are still in the 50-50 range since June 3rd. The odds makers have done a really strong job with adjusting their totals here. Still seeing those half run moves, but we're not seeing anything, of great outlier significance or anything like that. I did think it was the wrong move on Saturday when we saw the San Francisco St. Louis total go up with Anthony DeSclafani and Kwang Hyun Kim. That one went from 7.5 to 8. We were on the first 5 under for that one, but the full game wound up staying under as well. And also on Saturday, we saw a fade of Garrett Cole. That was against Nate Eovaldi in the Red Sox and Yankees matchup. Not really a big surprise to see Garrett Cole get faded, even though he was coming off of that really good performance against Houston. Everyone knows about his spin rate decrease. So we'll see what happens in his next start, as he pitched pretty well again against the Red Sox there in that rain-shortened game. On Sunday, I found it interesting that we had all that Brandon Woodruff money on Saturday against Luis Castillo, who's been pitching really, really well. But then the market was kind of tepid on Corbin Burnes against Sonny Gray on Sunday. And of course, the highlight of Sonny Gray trying to get pine tar off of his ass by rubbing it on the mound like a dog does, on the carpet. But, Burnes pitched exceptionally well. Blowout win for the Brewers there in that one. Kind of a strange move in that game. One that kind of left me scratching my head a little bit, but a huge series for the Brewers. They kind of gave some games back to the Reds right before the All-Star break. And, kind of some disappointing news for them coming out of the break with Devin Williams going on IL. But, they get two good starts in this series from Woodruff and Burnes. Get some more offense as well. The Reds bullpen was a train wreck. And the Brewers came away with the sweep there in that series. On Sunday, we saw another good start from Merrill Kelly. We saw that total come down from 9.5 to 9. Total pretty much sat 9 everywhere. I had under 9.5, and the run to push the total over with 2 outs in the ninth after Torey Lovullo inexplicably tried to push Merrill Kelly for a complete game. I don't know why you do that with a guy who had thoracic outlet syndrome surgery coming into the season. He's probably the best trade chip that you've got, unless you plan to move Ketel Marte. No idea what the hell is going through Torey Lovullo's head. I don't think he will ever manage again in the major leagues. And maybe I got lucky that one didn't fly over the total anyway. The Diamondbacks had guys on base all day long in that game. They had that Cole Calhoun double play. Just a disastrous weekend again for the Diamondbacks, even though they won yesterday's game. But still, I don't know why you send Merrill Kelly back out there when you know that he's probably going to be one of your better trade chips here at this point in time. We saw some pretty strong Carlos Rodon money against Framber Valdez as the White Sox with a nice series win over the Houston Astros. And I've talked about this before, but we saw Framber Valdez take money pretty much across the board in his first 7 or 8 starts. That hasn't happened here of late. And in fact, the market's kind of been against him. So maybe the sports books have kind of overcompensated a little bit for all of that Valdez steam early in the year, but he was bet against on Sunday, and the White Sox did win that game. Money came in against the Mariners on Sunday. That was Logan Gilbert against Patrick Sandoval. Gilbert's been outstanding for the Mariners since getting called up from AAA Tacoma. Sandoval's been pretty good too. I understand where the market was with regards to that move, but the Mariners, they just keep winning games in spite of what a lot of their metrics show. Taillon and the New York Yankees took money in Sunday Night Baseball against the Boston Red Sox. That was a fade of Martin Perez. Not really a surprise to see a fade of Martin Perez there. But the Yankees continue to take money. The betting markets really still like New York. There are a lot of reasons to like New York. And the Yankees even took some money in this series, being a little bit shorthanded as well. Maybe that could have been also a fade of the Red Sox. I guess you could certainly point to that too. But, the Yankees taking a lot of money out there on a pretty regular basis in the betting markets. Lastly, I'm surprised we didn't get more of a Mike Foltynewicz fade, although I didn't do it. So I guess that's my own fault. But Foltynewicz gave up like 10 runs, 4 home runs in that start against the Blue Jays. He's been awful everywhere, but especially looking to fade him on the road. I don't know how much longer the Rangers can watch that, but at the same time, they might as well use him as a sacrificial lamb and let him eat up some innings so they can kind of protect some of their younger arms. Here on Monday, lots of blanks on the betting board overnight. Not a ton of probable starters listed for these games here, but there were some noteworthy moves, including a move down in the Mets-Reds game. It's Gerard Eichhoff going up against Vladimir Gutierrez. Look, like I said, I think the market is not a fan of the Cincinnati Reds here. This offense has leveled off quite a bit. Castillo's been good. Tyler Mahle's been fine. Their starters have been okay. Their bullpen's really bad, though. So we saw some Mets money hit the overnight board for that game against the Reds there. The Giants and the Dodgers, this is obviously the headline line move of the day. Massive move here on the Dodgers and Tony Gonsolin taking on the Giants and Kevin Gausman. Now, this one's gone up about 30 cents here. And I do think that we get some San Francisco buyback as the day goes along. There probably are some concerns about Gausman because he was gone over the weekend, went back to Louisiana. His wife was having some complications with her pregnancy. So Gausman went down there. apparently everything is okay, and hopefully everything is okay enough for him to go back and make this start here. He was supposed to pitch on Friday, now gets the start on Monday. So I guess maybe there could be some concerns about that. But I also think, and I guess I'll talk about this here in a minute, so I'll save it actually. We'll talk about it here when we preview some series for the week ahead. A big move on Lance Lynn in game one for the Twins. That's against Griffin Jacks. Or big move on Lynn for the White Sox, against Griffin Jacks and the Twins. I get it. Totally understand it. Thought about playing the run line because Minnesota is just terrible. They are just really bad. Lance Lynn, $38 million richer today. So kudos to him for that. But, it's tough. I think it's tough to lay a run line in a doubleheader. Just the limited number of opportunities to go to the plate. Odds are the White Sox only hit 6 times in this game because they'll probably win and not have to bat in the 7th inning. So we'll see what happens there. But I did give it some thought. It's just kind of a tough mental thing to get over. Lastly, here for the line moves on Monday, Cleveland Indians, my Indians, taking some money against the Astros. This one's come down about 15, 20 cents or so. Giancarlo Mejia and Zach Greinke in that one. I don't know why the Indians are taking money. I mean, Mejia has not pitched well at all, but I like the over 9. Took the over 9 here for today with that Mejia and Greinke matchup. Indians offense, as I talked about earlier, they make a lot of hard contact. They've been better since June 3rd. They've been almost league average, which is a pretty big accomplishment for them. But they hit for power, and Zach Greinke will give up the long ball, and I assume the Astros bang out some hits and some runs against Mejia. So over 9, the play here tonight down at the Juice Box in Houston. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about this Giants-Dodgers series as we preview the week ahead. These two teams will play 7 games head-to-head between now and July 29th. 4-gamer at Dodger Stadium this week, 3 games at Oracle Park next week. Kevin Gausman, Tony Gonsolin tonight, Alex Wood, and to be determined on Tuesday. Logan Webb, Julio Urias on Wednesday. Anthony DeSclafani and Walker Buehler on Thursday. So as I mentioned, big Dodgers steam today. And I've talked about this a lot, that it feels like the Giants have been disrespected in the betting markets all year long. A lot of their favorite prices I feel like should have been bigger. A lot of times when they're an underdog, the line should be smaller, or maybe they shouldn't be an underdog at all. There's a disconnect between what they've actually done and how they're being priced in the betting markets. Today, we get respect for the Giants and for Gausman specifically, and the line shoots up. So I think this is really worth following as this series goes along, as next week's series comes about and everything like that. I think there's this perception out there that the Dodgers are just kryptonite for the Giants. The Dodgers have won 6 of the 9 meetings so far, but they've only outscored the Giants by 5 runs over those 9 games. And pretty much 2 of them, they had an 11-6 win and then I think something else. But 5 of the 9 games have been 1-run games. So I think there's this perception out there that the Giants can't beat the Dodgers. And I don't think that that's true. Now, it's not to say I'm going to have all kinds of Giants action in this series, but I will be curious to see how these games are priced and how these lines move. I'm not sure who's going to start for the Dodgers on Tuesday, but I expect Julio Urias to take money on Wednesday, and I know Walker Buehler will take money on Thursday. There's also a perception out there that Anthony DeSclafani, because he had one bad start against the Dodgers, can't pitch against the Dodgers. So I expect Walker Buehler money to come in on Thursday. But I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in this series here. Dodgers trail by a game. They're tied in the win column. They have 2 games in hand on the Giants. So curious to see what happens here with this series. And let's see what happens with the futures price for the National League West between these 2 teams as well. Rangers and the Tigers here. Kyle Gibson, Casey Mize in a good pitching matchup tonight. Dane Dunning, Tarek Skubal tomorrow. Jordan Lyles and to be determined on Wednesday. And then to be determined for the Rangers and Tyler Alexander on Thursday. Some blanks here in terms of the starting pitchers, but I will say this. When you look around Major League Baseball, and as I talked about already, I think it will be a very top-heavy second half of the year. I think based on what we've seen with the adjustment to foreign substances and all of that, the good teams will be really good and the bad teams will be really bad. The Rangers are a really bad team. The Tigers are not. The Tigers are now 43-51. And remember, this is a team that was 9-24 to start the season. So they're 7 games over 500, basically since mid to late May. They are playing very well. And I think they have a clear-cut goal in mind now of getting to 500 by the end of the year. And it's going to be easier said than done. But I think this Tigers team is highly, highly motivated the rest of the way. I think A.J. Hinch is a brilliant manager. I love that hire that they made. They've got some young guys, and I do worry a little bit about their arms and how they kind of protect them. But this Tigers team, man, I mean, they've been pretty much average offensively. They've been, in the realm of average. The pitching staff's been good. And there's this sense of belief with them. And this kind of delves into that gray area. As a metrics-based handicapper, it's not something I feel overly comfortable with. But I think that this Tigers team wants to get to 500. And they're taking on a Rangers team here that is awful. And a Rangers team that could trade Kyle Gibson, could trade Joey Gallo, should trade Joey Gallo. So I wouldn't be shocked if the Tigers play really, really well here in this series. Tonight's game is a coin flip, and I think that's a reasonable line for that. But I may take a piece of Skubal tomorrow. I may fade Lyles on Wednesday and take the Tigers. We'll see who gets that start for them. But I think that the Tigers are a team that's engaged, a team that's motivated, a team that has a goal in mind. Is it the playoffs? No. But for this team to go 500 is a massive accomplishment. So I think that's what they're kind of vying for here. And I think they will understand that this is a spot for them to win 3 out of 4 or get a sweep or something like that. So I think the Tigers are sufficiently motivated this week and may end up being a profitable team for us to play on in that series. The Red Sox and the Blue Jays get started tonight with Nick Pivetta and Ross Stripling, Garrett Richards, Alek Manoah tomorrow, Tanner Hoke, and Robbie Ray coming up here on Wednesday. Expect money on Alek Manoah on Tuesday. Get on this overnight because this line will go up. Garrett Richards has looked awful since the start of June. Big spin rate decreases for him. He's only a 2-pitch pitcher as it is. Command profile kind of waning here. I think the Jays are in great shape in this series. They've already taken some money tonight with Stripling. They'll take money tomorrow with Manoah, and they'll definitely take money on Wednesday with Robbie Ray against an unknown dude for the Red Sox. So I think that, look, I mean, if the Blue Jays want to get back into this thing, I think they have the chance to do so. This is a big series for them. And I think they will treat it as such. And their offense looks unstoppable right now. Red Sox pitching staff is faltering. This could be a sweep for the Blue Jays, and it wouldn't surprise me at all. So if you find a reasonable Blue Jays series price, I'm not sure what's out there. I haven't looked yet today. Maybe something in the 140, 145 range, something like that. It's probably worth doing. It could be higher than that. It could be as high as 160 or something. But I do think that the Blue Jays are in pretty good shape here for this series. Lastly, the Cubs and the Cardinals. Alec Mills and John Woodford tonight. Sounds like a bourbon collaboration or something like that. Trevor Williams and to be determined on Tuesday. Kyle Hendricks, Adam Wainwright Wednesday. Adbert Alzali and Kwang Hyun Kim coming up on Thursday. Tough series to gauge here. It's at Busch Stadium with 2 bad offenses. The Cardinals just won a series against the Giants and scored 7 runs total in the series. The Cubs, decent look down in Arizona. The offense played a little bit better, but they've got all those guys on the trade block. You do kind of wonder, what their engagement level is here as we go forward. But, a real tricky series here. I kind of lean towards Chicago tonight. Didn't take it, but I kind of had a little bit of a lean that way with Mills against Woodford. Woodford at least pitched 6 days ago. Mills has not pitched in over 10 days. So that was part of the problem for me there. But, just 2 teams that I think are very tough to gauge at this point in time right now. So, a headline kind of series. I think 2 games are on ESPN in this series, but not sure there's going to be a whole lot of betting value between that Cubs and Cardinals matchup. Covered a lot of ground here on the show. skatingtripods@gmail.com to get on the list for the Bettor's Box show notes. That'll do it for me. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. I'll talk to you again on Thursday, And remember that you'll never strike out when you're in the bettor's box.